Welcome to Office Line AssetGear. AssetGear is a CMMS software, that is, a computerized maintenance management system, which is designed to streamline and automate maintenance management processes within PESO Energy Services. This software will help track maintenance tasks, manage work orders, requisition, preventive maintenance, permit to work, and also the warehouse for inventory. You need to navigate to peso.assetgear.net and then log in with your credentials. If you don't have any now, you could actually reach out to your IT and get your profile set up. I'm going to log in with my own details right away. So I'm currently logging with a super user, so you're going to be seeing quite a lot of features. If you log into your profile, you might not see some of this link. Okay, starting up from the first thing we have here is the operations module. The operations module have subsections to it. That's where you have the dashboard, service request, work order, asset spare parts, and preventive maintenance task. So the dashboard kind of give you the holistic view of what's going on in the operation. It's majorly centered around the work order. So what is happening today will be featured here. If there's any job happening for the current day, they will all be listed on this part of the screen. And this other section here is for history job, and you can kind of see them and track them, and they will be here until they have been attended to, either by closing them or by flagging them as suspended. Then we have a section here that talks about service requests. There are departments that will request the assistance of the maintenance to carry out some jobs. So we have service request module, which we'll be going into later on, and you will get to see how it works. Service request will be initiated by the likes of operations, LPG, sometimes admin, and every other department apart from maintenance will require the need of service requests to request for a job or a service be done. And the process is by going to the new service request section here, which is directly under operations, service request. You click new service request, you select that you need a job be done. The next part that follow is to select the asset. An asset is required to complete the service request document. This is the asset that you want to make complaint about. Clicking on this part will display all the list of assets on the platform. You could also easily search for those assets by just typing, and you could see all the assets there. So if you notice any asset is not behaving the way it should, you have a weird sound or some leakage or something like that, you could actually specify the asset, determine the priority of what it is, the effects that the sound or the visual observation could cause, and also here is where you detail what your observations are. And immediately once that is done, you go ahead and create the request. Now this request does two things. The first thing is that it sends a mail to the maintenance department. It sends a mail to all the supervisors and also copy the superintendent. And after it must have done that, the next thing is that the system will generate a work order assigned to maintenance. So the maintenance will then decide where to push it to, either mechanical or electrical. You could also come here to see all the service requests you've created so far and follow through on what the feedbacks are on the service request you've created. You could also come and document, add more comments to the service request, because once you've created a service request, you can't actually pull it back anymore. However, you can provide more comments or context to what you said earlier on. This is the work order that the service request opened or generated automatically, which is what maintenance will use to actually carry out the task that has been raised here. Work order is the center of everything on the CMMS. We use work order to do three major things. The first thing we'll use work order for is to actually carry out a job on the platform. The second thing we use work order for is to collect or receive materials from the warehouse. The third thing we'll be using work order for is to make a requisition. Let's start with the first thing. When we want to carry out a job, the first thing we do is to go ahead and create new work order. We have this little thing here that looks like a drop down, and this is to give us the map of all the assets on the platform. One thing you will discover at the heart of the work order is the assets. You need to specify the assets that you are working with or that you want to work on. So when you drop down here, it gives you all the location available. You have location and also assets mixed in between. So you can also specify if you want to go deep down into a location. Once you go in, you see all the assets and also locations inside those assets. So when you select a particular asset, it becomes active. That's the asset you are working with. You could also decide to do it manually by directly typing the assets into this section here by saying diesel. So once you type it, it's also the same thing here. It's kind of faster when you type your asset directly into the text area. The next part is to describe the work that you want to do. So you go ahead and describe the work. Let's say replacement of parts. The next section is to specify the work class. The work class is what categorizes the work that you are doing. And these classes are very important. These classes are what determine the kind of task you are doing on the asset. And we have them grouped into several tasks. We have construction, corrective maintenance, and the list goes on. So you can pick exactly what kind of maintenance you are doing on the particular asset. We then have the open date, which is when you are doing the job, followed by your department and units. By default is tied to your departments based on the settings when your profile is being created. You can go ahead and provide work details. This is where you can have the scope of work documented for the particular work you're about to do. Now, everything we're talking about now is just on the open section. You still have several sections to go. So let's look at the warehouse inventory. Under this same work order, you have a section called warehouse inventory, and this allows you to get direct access to the warehouse. You could actually pull items from the warehouse that will aid you in doing this job, which is replacement of parts. You could actually specify something, replacement of parts. So I could just pick something here. I could search directly into the warehouse. Anything I type here is directly connected to the warehouse, and you could literally see the quantity of that item in the warehouse. You could also search by part number and also ICN number, which is the inventory control number in the warehouse. The next part is to specify the purpose. What is the purpose of this part on this asset? That's where this part comes to place. Maybe it's to refill or to oil or to grease, whatever it is that you want to use this spare part to do. You document that there, and the quantity that you need can also be specified. And don't forget, when you are done, you need to click the add to update that record, and you can keep adding as many records as you want or as many items as you want to capture, and we can keep going on and on. That's for this section. Remember, our open section is still there. We just got into the warehouse inventory, and at this point we've not created our work order. We are still in the process of creating our work order. At any point in time, you could as well just come here and click on save as draft. So moving on, we have the approval process of work order. In terms of if you want to collect materials from the warehouse, all work order must be approved by the superintendent before items are released from the warehouse. So if you create any work order, you will need to send it to your superintendent before the warehouse can give it an attention. Let's log in as a supervisor and see how you can send your work order to your superintendent. After you must have created your work order, like so, we've already walked through how the work order is being created. You could then go back to navigate to the work order. Let's look for an open one. Let's say this. I click on view, and you will notice at the bottom here it gives you access or ability to save and send to your superintendent. So as a supervisor, you will always see this on the bottom. When you create a work order directly, it will send it to your superintendent automatically for approval. For example, this particular work order has not been sent to anyone. It has just been created by the supervisor, and you can then send it to the superintendent by clicking on this button. Immediately you send it to the superintendent, he can then go ahead and approve. Once approved, you won't be able to change the warehouse inventory that you've requested of again. You just click send to superintendent and it's off. You can then see the status has now changed to sent to superintendent. Let's now go in as a superintendent to approve the work order. On the superintendent page, there is a new section here called awaiting approval. The superintendent can click this and they will see only the work order that has been sent to them. So if I click here, I can then see the work order, check the inventory and make sure it tallies with what the user needs. I can also make corrections at will, and once those correction is made, I can then approve. That becomes what will be given to the user. So when I approve, it goes away from here. The requester gets an email, that's the supervisor gets an email. The warehouse also gets an email to that effect. Check it out again. This is the item already approved. The superintendent can still make adjustments to the quantity. However, the supervisor cannot. So if the supervisor comes to check it here, you can see that it's saying approved on the supervisor's page. You can come here, you will notice that the quantity is sealed. You can't change the quantity anymore. However, you can still go ahead and update other parts of the work order, but this part here is sealed because it has been approved for disbursement. If you then need to make adjustment to the quantity, only the superintendent can make the adjustment at their level. So let's get to see it. So now it's saying 3. We can change it to maybe 13 and then saved. So that will then be honored when they take it to the warehouse. The warehouse can then issue 13 to them as opposed to what was there before, which was 3. So you can see that it's now 13. Non-stocked material. This non-stock material are for requisition purpose. I mentioned that work order are for 3 major purposes: to carry out a task, to collect item from the warehouse, and this section is for requisition purpose. So if you want to make requisition, you still have to fill this part and then come to this non-stocked material and document what material you want to make requisition for. So I'll say laptop, and quantity 2. Unit of measurement can be each, OEM, Lenovo. Then we can have part number. This can be maybe a model number or a brand. So once that is done, you could actually click add, and you could continue like that to keep capturing as many non-stock materials as you want. The next section is labor section, and this labor section are for when you want to use the work order to do a particular job. While carrying out the job, or in the process, or after you must have completed the job, you might need to come to the labor section to document people that aided you in the completion of the job. So you will see the names of everybody on the platform under the employee section. You could select their name and then go ahead and specify the role that they perform, and then you specify the number of hours that they were engaged in doing or in performing that role. So you can capture as many people that were involved in performing such tasks for you. The other part is to specify who the supervisor is. Then you now have this section for contractors. This is still talking to if you are using the work order for work, then you are supposed to specify who are the contractors that aided you in doing the job or that was contracted to do the job. So you can put XYZ company. This can be a company or an artisan, so it can just be a name of the contractor or an individual. This can be the scope of work. This should be very brief, a 1-line or a sentence to describe the scope of work that was performed. And once this is done, you click on the add button. So don't forget to always use the add button. You could also use edit to make adjustment to what has been captured. Finally, you have the document section. The document section, it's very important. You can use it to attach pictures of maybe what you are trying to work on, or to showcase more information about the items you are trying to order. Once this part is done, the next thing is to click either save as draft. What that means is you are coming back to work on this, or you click on create new work order. Once you create new work order, all your work order will be available under my department. Your department lists out all the work order that everybody in your department has created, and you can have access to it here. You could also use the filter on the left hand side to focus only on your unit, or check out only the open work order, closed one, suspended, or part on hold. You could also view all work order in the entire organization depending on your role in the platform. So this is not available to everybody. So if you don't see it, not to worry. You could also look at work order by work classification. Maybe you want to check all the requisition that has been made. You could see it right here. As a manager, you are responsible for approving, reviewing requisition that has been sent to you by your superintendent. So when you get to the work order station, the next part is for you just to head straight to awaiting approval. You have access to see all the work order that are under your department, but to filter all the noise, you could just strictly or simply go to awaiting approval. When you get to awaiting approval, you have work order or requisition that has been sent to you, which has been reviewed by the warehouse. When you click on view, you get this section that showcases all the items needed to be used for a specific asset. You could also have access to the supporting document if document has been attached to it, and you have 3 tasks that you could relatively perform when you get to this stage. You could either reject the request with comments. You could request a review if you want any of these updates to be changed, any of the quantity or item to be reviewed by the warehouse person. You could make your recommendation and send that back to the warehouse, or you could just approve. Any of this action can be taken by just simply clicking. This is the one that contains where you have previous comments that has been made. This is how the comments show on the system. So if you have any comment to make, that can be captured here, followed by any of the action that you want to take below. Edit a work order that you've done before, go to my unit and say I do view. So when you do view, it gives you a way for you to recall such work order and make modification if need be. For example, when you create a work order for the first time, you still need to come back to the system to close it. So to close the work order, you search for the work order, either coming through my department and manually looking for it, or if you have the number, you just come to the bottom of the page here and search. You could search by service number, work order description, or the asset. Let's look for this, and then you have to click on search. Once you click on search, it will filter the result out for you, and you could view and click on the label section. This part is where you select everybody that were involved in doing or carrying out the task for you. You head straight to the close section. You specify the date and time the job was actually closed. So once that has been selected, you also specify the task that was done, and then change the status from open to close. Finally, you save. This action will close the work order. Spare parts. These sections allow you to search through the warehouse to see what is available in the warehouse. You could see the ICN, which is the code. You could also look at the description of the item, the VPN, which is vendor part number, quantity on request, order level, and also the shelf location. You could see more and get to see pictures if there's any, other details, and also attachments. If there are attachments to this particular item, you could also see them. You could also search for items based on these parameters here. by the code, description, VPN, and manufacturer.